Welcome everybody. Lovely to see some familiar names in my participants list. Great to see some new people as well. My name is Anne, if I haven't met you before, and I'm one of the tutors here at First Intuition. And I'm going to be with you this evening to run through some of the applied management accounting questions. We're going to be looking this evening particularly at some elements from task 2. Now task 2 is actually quite a large task. It's worth 17% of the overall marks in your assessment. So because there's so much involved with this one, it's actually 24 marks in total. We're going to complete part of a task 2 this evening, and then we'll come back and have a look at part of a task 2 as well when I see you next week. So the session is being recorded, so that gives you the benefit of listening again if you find that helpful. So shall we move then into our question pack? Let's move to task number 2. We tell you here that task number 2 is a task that deals with budget preparation, evaluation of a budget, and revision of budgets. So the initial preparation, evaluation, perhaps telling us what the budget is actually telling us. So evaluation might be a report part of the question, like a narrative part where we have to evaluate the way the budget has been put together. Do we think it's sensible? Is there anything that could have been done differently? Maybe some critique of the assumptions on which the budget has been based. So we expect that to be part of this question, and then also revision of budgets. So 24 marks altogether, 30 minutes to complete it in the live assessment. The task briefing is there for your information. Not going to look at it now, but I think if you feel a little bit rusty on some of those topics, it's a great thing to look through. And perhaps as we go through the tasks, if you get some of the questions wrong and you think, oh, I wouldn't have known how to approach that, then again, the task briefing is great for that. Gives you an overview, set of revision notes, if you like, for the various topics that might appear in this task. So I think it's a great thing to have to hand. So I'm just going to scroll past it now. All of this you've seen because it is a revision course. And some of this we're actually going to be using in the questions this evening. And we don't want to spoil the fun. So we shall skip past all of that and head into the task that we want to practice. So here we are. So part A here says, can we identify which type of budget is being described in each of the scenarios below? So you can see we've got a list of 4 different scenarios. And then we've got a pick list, and our pick list is 6 different types of budget. I'm actually going to label those 1 to 6. And then what I would like you to do, just read through that pick list first, perhaps. And as you read through the pick list, just be thinking to yourself, do I know what sort of budget that is? What do I know about that budget? So we've got incremental. We have zero-based, priority-based, rolling, activity-based, and then contingency-based. So there are different types of budget. And then here we have 4 scenarios. And it's asking me to identify which type of budget is being described in each of the scenarios. So let's start with the first one. And then you can perhaps use in the chat box, tell me whether you think it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 from the pick list there. So first one, a budget prepared to deal with uncertainties. Ensuring risk is incorporated into the budgeting process. If you're not sure, you can always go on and look at the others and maybe eliminate some of the other answers by selecting from the pick list for some of the others. Okay, so we've got some people going for number 6 and some of you also going for number 4. So we're a bit divided between 6 and 4. And I think this is perhaps where, and I can't guarantee, let me just caveat this, I can't guarantee that each budget type won't appear more than once, but it's quite likely because each descriptor is quite different. So the answer actually is number 6. So if you selected number 6, well done. And if you did select number 4, I can quite see why, because rolling budgets certainly do help us deal with uncertainties because we're constantly revising them. But what you will see is as we look through some of the other scenarios that a rolling budget is better described with one of the others. So that's how I know that it's going to use contingency-based budgeting here. And then rolling budgets will come later. Again, I could select that, or I could say that's it. I think it's either this or this, and then I could perhaps confirm when I'd looked at the other three. So the fact we're dealing with uncertainties, the fact that we're trying to incorporate risk, that word risk there particularly leads me towards a contingency-based budgeting approach. And a contingency-based approach, again, if you need to do a bit of revision, we do have a full definition of each of these here. But look at this. Contingency-based plan and budget is to deal with unexpected financial problems that arise suddenly. It incorporates risk. So that word risk is what led me to the contingency-based budget. So all about uncertainty and all about risk. So if we'd looked over the task briefing, I'm sure you would have gone for that one. Let's try the next one. A budget driven by cost drivers. Beneficial for a business that has a range of diverse products. So it's driven by cost drivers. Yes, that one's perhaps a little bit more obvious, isn't it? Hopefully that phrase cost drivers points you towards number 5, which is our activity-based budget. So we look at the different categories of cost. Look at our business and we split it into different cost categories. We then look at each cost category and say, what causes that cost to be incurred? Those categories we know as cost pools. So we ask the question, what drives that cost? What causes that cost to be incurred? And we can then base our budget based on the number of cost driving activities. So that would be activity based. The next one, a budget to recognise the importance of growth areas of the business and focus on strategic goals. Oh, our power's back. That's nice. Yes, we're getting some answers in for this one. Absolutely right. This one, we are looking at priority based. So you can see there, to recognise the importance of growth areas. So prioritising the areas that are going to be growing, focusing on the strategic goals, making sure that we've got our priorities in order and that our budgets are putting the resources into these priority areas. Excellent. And then the last one, I might have sort of given this one away when we did the first one, but let's have a look. A fluid budget prepared in uncertain times, which enables it to be updated as elements become more certain or situations change. Of course, that one is a rolling budget approach. And hopefully, having now seen the definition of the rolling budget, if you'd chosen rolling budget for the first one, you might look at it and think, oh, okay, actually that last one is a much better description of a rolling budget. This idea about being fluid, this idea about it being updated as things become more certain, constantly revised as we get new information. So that's definitely a better description of rolling budget. Excellent. So that was our first part of that task, then part A. When we get to part B, we're actually into a few calculations. So let's see where we are going with this one. You work for Adange Limited, a business which manufactures makeup. Your finance manager has asked for your help with the budget reports for the next period. You're asked to provide some calculations for one of the products called product M. It says, can we calculate the raw material requirements for the period? So a little bit of budget preparation here. There's also some instructions, very specific instructions here. Do not show decimal places. Round any decimal places up to the next whole number of kilograms. So if it gives me a specific rounding instruction, I've got to make sure that I follow it. And what I'm actually being asked for here are two things. How many kilograms are required for production? And then how many kilograms must be purchased? So this is a very interesting question. And again, it links to the task briefing, which we haven't reviewed. But within the task briefing, we have a little diagram showing the order in which budgets are prepared, the interrelationship of our different budgets. So what I'm going to do here is maybe on a new sheet of paper, I'm just going to sketch out the pertinent bits of that diagram. Because with any budget preparation, it's about getting things done in the right order. And ordinarily, our limiting factor or our principal budget factor is generally sales. Why can't we produce more units? Well, we could, but there's no point because we can't sell more. So sales are usually the principal budget factor, and they then determine how many units we're going to produce. And production is absolutely key. I always think that this is a little bit like a map, and production is the roundabout in the middle that takes us off in all the different directions. So production is a key budget in any question involving functional budget preparation. From production, I could work out how much material is needed. So the material that I need to use in order to hit that production target. And once I've done my material usage, only then can I go on to my material purchases budget. So I start with the material that I plan to use, and then I move into how much I'm planning to buy. But I need to know production first to work out the usage, and then usage will get me to purchases. So I'm drawing this just to demonstrate things have to be done in a very particular order. So as I find my question again, then here, I need to have a look and see how many units I plan to produce. So let's start picking out some of the key information here then. 600 units of M are to be manufactured next week. And we've been asked for the calculations for one of the products, which is product M. So 600 units will be manufactured. So on here, I could actually annotate this now with 600 units. Production is 600 units. That's how many I'm going to make. The next question is, how much material will be used to make 600 units? And as I read on, it tells me each unit requires 18 kilograms of material. So I'm going to do 600 of them. Every one needs 18 kilograms. But that's not even quite it, because if I read the next sentence, it then tells me 6% of all the material that I actually input gets wasted. So I don't only use 18 kilograms, I use more than that because there is some wastage. So shall we start working through that then? We've got 600 units of production of product M. We need 18 kilograms per unit. That will tell me the amount of good kilograms that I need. So I need 10,800 good kilograms. And what I mean by that is after wastage has been accounted for. So after I've wasted them, I need 10,800 left. Wastage is 6%. Would anybody like to help with how we might actually then gross up this 10,800 to account for my 6% wastage? Lovely. Excellent. Thank you, Paul. You are quite right. These good kilograms are after I've wasted 6%. So obviously when I start with my materials, I start with 100%, 6% get wasted, which means that this 10,800 that's left is just 94% of what I started with. So what I'd be tempted to do here then, to gross that up, is to take my 10,800 kilograms and I would multiply by the 100 and divide by 94. And in doing that, I'm basically recognizing that these good kilograms represent 94% of what I started with. 6% was wasted. So 10,800 divided by 94, basically saying the 10,800 is 94%. So I divide by 94, multiply by 100 to get the total kilograms I should be starting with. It did say I must round up. So 11490 then if I round up, and that would be my total kilograms. Now, if you prefer, you could actually multiply by 6 and to try to find the actual wastage part rather than going straight into the total there and then add the wastage onto the good ones. I just thought it was quicker to get straight to the total there. Now, what I would always encourage you to do in exam questions is to then say, well, have I done that right? Is there a double check here? Well, I think there is, because if I take 11,490 kilograms on my calculator and then I multiply by 6%, that tells me how many are wasted, knock that off and check you've still got enough left. And I have. It gives me 10,800.6. So I would still have enough kilograms left after I've wasted 6% of that total. So that's actually the answer to this first part. How many kilograms are required for production? 11,490. So where from there? Well, the next part is how many kilograms must be purchased? Well, I now know how many kilograms I'm going to use. Anybody help me with how do I get from the number that I'm going to use to the number that I need to purchase? What do I need to adjust for in between usage and purchases? Excellent. Yep. You need to adjust for inventory. So you need to adjust for any changes in inventory. And we don't want to overcomplicate this. So I would probably just start with my usage. That's how many I plan to use. Then I just ask a very simple question. Do I need to buy all of those? Well, the follow-on question is, it depends, doesn't it? Have you already got some? If so, how many? Let's look. The opening inventory is 300 kilograms. Well, if I've already got 300 kilograms, I don't need to buy those because I've already got them. So I deduct my opening inventory. I don't need to purchase it because I already have it. So at that point, we could conclude then we only need 11,190 kilograms. But we're not quite finished because the question went on to say, yes, you can use up that opening inventory and therefore not buy it, but you do need to have some closing inventory. So you've got some kilograms ready for next week. Otherwise, you start next week, you've got no work to do because you've got no materials. So you actually need to then buy extra just to add into your closing inventory. So by the time we add the closing inventory on, we get to 11,940 kilograms. And that becomes our answer for the purchases. Oh, that's not very good additions, is it? Let me just try that again. Just looking at that, doing a sense check. I don't think so. 11,640. That looks a bit better. So that's how many I'm going to buy. But notice the order that we tackled that question in. First is starting with the production, which in my diagram is always like the roundabout within the map. If I can get to production, I can go to sales. If I can get to production, I can do material usage. After usage, I can then transition into purchases. So I've got to just make sure that I do things in the correct order. If I had a labour budget, I could do that once I knew the production figures, so that doesn't interfere with materials at all. If I had to do an overhead budget, I could do that once I knew production. I wouldn't need to do materials before that one either. So production is like this roundabout. Once I get there, I can do labour, I can do overhead, I can do materials, I can go in any direction, even to sales. So 11640 is the answer for that bit. Excellent. Some more calculations here then as we head to part C. Part C says, calculate the labour budget for the period. Do not show decimal places, round any decimals to the nearest whole number. Well, they were our instructions from last time, so I'm happy with that. But a labour budget, interestingly, that's mentioned now, because notice how labour can be done once I know production. It's in no way linked to the materials. Labour is linked to production. So let's see what we know. 32,000 units of E are going to be produced in the month of January. Each unit takes 6 minutes to produce. 18 staff will each work 160 basic hours in January. How many overtime hours need to be worked to complete the production? Well, in order to answer this then, I think there's two things that we have to work out. We have to work out how many hours are actually available from our staff. We know how many staff there are and how many hours they're working. And I need to work out how many hours are needed based on how many I'm going to produce and how long it's going to take. So I think we can probably fit this work in over here. So let's start with the hours that are actually needed. The answer we're looking for is how many overtime hours. So let's see how many hours in total are needed to do the job. So 32,000 units, each taking 6 minutes. If I just multiply that by 6, I get the number of minutes that are needed. I think I'd prefer to keep this in hours. So I'll times it by 6 to turn it into minutes, and then I'll divide by 60 to get it back into hours. Don't really want to be dealing with minutes if I can avoid it. So 3,200 hours are needed to satisfy my production demand. In terms of what's available, well, I've got 18 staff and they will work 160 normal hours each. So we're looking at 2,880 hours. Compared with the 3,200 that I need. So that tells me how many hours the staff would need to work in overtime. So 320. If you're getting 3,200, just have a look at your calculations there and see if you can work out where your extra zero came from. So hours needed compared with hours available. I think that's quite a nice bit of the question, probably a bit nicer than part D, which we're going to next. Setting us up for part D though, starting us to get to think about the time taken for things. Everybody okay with that one? If you did get 3,200, are we okay with why it's actually 320? Lovely. Part D then. Part D says, can we calculate subcontracting requirements? Do not show decimals. Round any decimals to the nearest whole number. Okay, same instruction we've been having with the other parts. And this one wants to know how many units must be subcontracted. So my answer is going to be in units. So what do I know now? 8,290 units are to be manufactured next week. So that's how many units I need in order to be able to sell to my customers. Maybe let's just jot that down while we're here. So the units that are required are 8,290. The chances are we can't do all of those because it says some might need to be subcontracted. So let's look. Each unit takes 4 minutes to produce, and we have got 410 hours available. Any additional requirements have to be subcontracted. So if those 410 hours are not enough to make the 8,290 units I need, the rest of the units will have to be subcontracted. So that's what we're going to work on here. So let's have a look then at the availability. What have we got? Well, we've got 410 hours, and each unit is going to take me 4 minutes to produce. Let's have a look. Right, what I think I'm going to do first is actually turn my hours into minutes, because these take 4 minutes to produce. So let me just turn this into minutes. We often don't work in minutes, but I think it's going to make it easy here. So we have available 410 times 60, because there's obviously 60 minutes in an hour. So we've got 24,600 minutes available. And if each unit takes 4 minutes to produce, 4 minutes per unit, I divide that by 4, and that will tell me how many units we are able to produce in-house. Maybe I could have called this in-house availability. So I'm looking at how much time I have available. I'm turning it into minutes just because I think it's a bit easier with this task to work with minutes. So work out how many minutes I've got. 4 minutes to produce each one. So I know how many I can make. I know how many I need to make. Then I can see the shortfall. So comparing the number that I can make in-house with the number I need to be making shows me the shortfall. And the shortfall is the number to be subcontracted. So 2,140 units. Well done. I'm seeing some right answers in the box, and Salima there, I think your answer was the availability in-house, so that's great. Just got to make sure we work through that in stages. So because the previous question wanted to know how many hours needed to be worked, as I went through the workings, I tried to keep everything in hours. So then at the end, everything was in hours. Here, I wanted to know units. So as I went along through the question, I tried to make sure everything was in units. So it was a nice comparison at the end. Right. So part E of the question then, we're going to finish with this bit today. Then we're going to come back and look at part F next time, because part F is like a full question in itself. And I don't want to rush through it because it's a written bit, and I know nobody really likes written bits. So I want to make sure that we get time to do it properly. So here in part E, to explain 2 benefits and 2 drawbacks of subcontracting labour hours. Anybody like to give me any ideas about that? You think of anything good or anything bad about subcontracting your labour hours? Not much space there, but we can perhaps use that bit underneath. Good. Like that one, Alison. Absolutely. So shall we have that under benefits? Now, it does use the word explain, doesn't it? So perhaps we could say one of the benefits is flexibility. Oh, brilliant. You've gone with that word as well, Paul. Flexibility in terms of we only pay for the hours, brackets work, that is needed. So we're explaining, and I am only doing summarized notes here, but I'm trying to explain. Of course, permanent staff need to be paid even if there is no work for them. So I think that's a definite advantage. Yep, like that one, Madalena, talking about focusing on other things. Absolutely. Yeah, Paul's you've given me some disadvantages as well, which is great. We're going to come to those just now. Let's just put another advantage on here then. Allows managers to focus on other areas because they're not constantly concerned with their staff and what they're going to get them to do because we haven't got enough work for them or they're off sick or whatever else might be going wrong. So it allows managers to focus on other things, maybe like growing the business. One of the key things I think we could include here, it did say two, which I'm going to give you a third one, is the expertise. It could be that the subcontracting company or the subcontracting partner is an expert in the subcontracted area, whatever that might be. So I think that's usually a big advantage and one of the reasons that people often subcontract things. So at First Intuition, we subcontract our course materials, not the writing of them, but the printing of them. So if you book a course, the course materials come from our printing company directly. They organise their DHL people to deliver them to you. They print them, they put them in the binder, they get them out to you. We used to do that ourselves when I first started at First Intuition, when there were only 7 staff across the entire First Intuition group. We used to get together and photocopy and hole punch the notes on an evening before we all went home ready for class the next day. We got too big to be able to do that. So we use somebody else to help with that now. We also subcontract our IT. So we have a company that helps us out with networking and antivirus and sourcing new laptops because they're just far better at it than we are. So expertise is another great reason. I'm seeing some drawbacks or disadvantages as well, which is good. So let's just pull in some of those. So what are we coming up with here? Check I didn't miss any. Yeah, loss of quality and loss of control. That was one of Paul's. So I'm just going to put that one on before it pops off the screen. I think that's one of the big ones here. It's not guaranteed, is it? So let's say possible loss of quality. They may, of course, produce better quality. So possible loss of quality, but the loss of control is often a big factor. So depending on what it is that you're outsourcing as to how important that might be to you, but you want to make sure that your subcontracting partner is producing to the quality that you want them to. So however you need to interfere with that by maybe doing quality control checks alongside them before you accept the goods, that is definitely an issue. Okay, what else have we got? Yep, expensive, can be expensive. Sometimes I think it can actually be more cost effective. I think it depends on what it is that you're subcontracting. But for us, as an example, subcontracting the production of our course materials works out far better than if we had to organise full-time staff to be organising DHL to come and pick up the notes, all the admin that goes with it, the photocopier, the size of the printer machines that would need to make that happen. They'd need to be in a building, so then we'd have to be renting extra space so we could house these photocopiers. Yeah, probably for us it works out cheaper, but it can be expensive as well. I think that's a good point. Yes, Alison, another point there, can take time to bring them up to speed with our business processes. So let's just say, because sometimes it can be difficult initially to integrate. Integrate or transition initially. There might be resistance from other staff if we're talking here about subcontracting some labour hours specifically, which is what it did ask about. So that means that we're not using our own people to do all the work. We're using somebody else to do some of the work. Our own people might be threatened. They might think, well, these subcontractors have come along and they work faster than we do. That's not going to be good because we're going to be shown up to be a little bit lazy here. So that could be a problem. So it can be difficult to integrate or transition initially, particularly with staff. Maybe the subcontract staff don't really feel part of the team. So they don't feel fully integrated into the team, just as an example. And of course, they also don't know what they're doing. So this idea of loss of quality, loss of a little bit of loss of control, it might just take some time for them to be trained. I think somebody said that, didn't we? Yeah, it takes time to bring them up to speed. So we don't need all of these points, but the time taken for these new staff to learn the business processes needs to be factored in. So you needed 2. We've given you far more than 2 there, just so you've got an idea. In the exam, worth noting, a strict marker would only mark the first 2, then they'd stop reading. So there's no point giving 3 if it says 2. I just wanted to give you a few more so you can see that there's actually a range of ideas that you could have pulled from. You didn't, you weren't restricted to there only being 2 answers. There was more that you could actually say. And as Madalena says, loss of financial control. We might be able to find different ways to reduce expenses. I think what can happen there, and I think perhaps what you're getting at there, Madalena, which is a very good point, is that we decide not to employ our own staff. We decide to employ the subcontractors. So we become reliant on the subcontractors because we now don't have our own staff to do the job. And the subcontractors put the price up, but we're now stuck with them because we've made redundant all our own staff that used to do the job. We've now only got the subcontract staff. So if they put the price up, we're sort of a little bit stuck with it. We've lost our in-house capability. That's another drawback. Yeah. Okay, excellent. So that then is as much as we are going to do in this session. And there is another part to this question, and you are welcome to actually maybe have a look at this before I see you again next time. It's 12 marks for this part of the question. So if you actually wanted to have a go at this yourself before I see you, that would be great. And then we will be putting an answer together next week together. But to evaluate the draft budget, taking into consideration the assumptions used in its preparation. This is a really great part of the task. It's really quite challenging. So it's a budget that's been prepared. We're being asked to evaluate it, so to come up with some good and some bad points. But I have no intention of rushing through that in the next few minutes. So I'd like us to have a full session looking at that, particularly because I know written bits are not very popular. Okay, so thank you so much for joining for this evening. If you do have any questions, you are welcome to hang around now. I'm going to stop the recording.